Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You know, it's often said that there is no practice in for Shin Buddhists. Nothing like meditation for people who follow Zen, or the repeated recitation of sutras, or certain vocalizations, or the lifestyle of certain monastic orders, where they get up really early in the morning and they have their last meal by noon. And in some countries, they go around and use the begging bowl and go to collect food. Or we don't control our bodies, or try to control our bodies, like some of the ascetic traditions in Theravada. If anything, it is said that we Shin Buddhists do deep hearing. Now, what on earth does that mean? Reverend Dr. Jeff Wilson, in his book, Buddhism of the Heart, says deep hearing is actually really hard for ordinary people like me. He points out that some Buddhist traditions employ visual metaphors for awakening, seeing reality, observing one's true self, things like that. Shin Buddhists tend to employ auditory ones. The difference, he explains, is subtle but significant. Hearing, he explains, is receptive, open, and it implies that you receive something from another, rather than assertively seeing it yourself with penetrating eyesight. There is even the same difference between the act of listening and the act of hearing. And we do the hearing. This is the manifestation of Shin Buddhism's emphasis on humility and receptiveness. The better to abandon reliance on the false ego self. This could also be explained as the difference between the other power, efforts, or kariki, and self-power, or jidiki. Dr. Wilson points out to the difficulty of really hearing. He says, for example, in everyday conversation, we try to listen to what someone is saying, but often our mind wanders. Either we get distracted or bored, or we begin to figure out what we're going to reply to what we think the person is saying, even as our conversant partner is still talking. And then by that we miss the actual meaning what the person is saying, both verbally and non-verbally. Likewise, Dr. Wilson says that hearing the Dharma is especially difficult for us, whether it comes to us at the temple, while talking and interacting with friends and mentors, or while walking silently in nature. We tend to lose our attention and get entangled in our own thoughts, especially self-oriented thoughts. We just aren't aware of the message coming at us from all over. A perfect example is while we were chanting the Juice Say Yen, my mind wandered and I thought, rats, I forgot to put the flag up outside. Your mind wanders. And so we miss the messages. You know, a long time ago, before Ekoji was founded, we were a small Dharma school program. For opening services, for our opening service, we asked Reverend Arthur Vergara from the New York Buddhist Church to be our guest speaker. He talked about our efforts to get a Dharma school started as a path to develop for our children and ourselves a third eye, a Buddhist eye, with which to see us and reality of the world. You know, in the idea of the voice that calls, it is said that Amida reveals to us our true nature and the truths of the universe all the time. I think that is the deep hearing we try to practice. The opening ourselves and receiving Amita's calling voice. But as Jeff Wilson suggests, there are many ways that Amita calls to us. What comes to mind quickly, of course, is listening to or hearing Reverend Hayashi's Dharma talks, or hearing in our Dharma discussions, hearing each other as we try to help understand ourselves and the meaning of what the Dharma means to us. Or it could be from learning about and reading the books about Buddhism and Mahayana thought that's in our library. But the message comes from many ways. When I was teaching my Dharma school class, I would point to things in nature to talk about Amita's calling voice. Such things as the changes in the season as a reminder of impermanence. We even used roadkill as Amita's reminding us of our own mortality. But how often have we seen roadkill and ignored it without giving it any thought, much less thinking about it in a Buddhist context? Generally, when I see roadkill, I view it impassively. But in a larger sense, that dying, it could be our own pets, or someone we love, or even ourselves. I used to tell our students that when you see roadkill, say the Nembutsu, not for the animal, because like all sentient beings, it's already covered by Amita's compassionate vow. But rather say the Nembutsu in gratitude for the Buddhist lesson about ourselves that dead animal reminds us. Amita's voice reaching us through nature can be more subtle than roadkill. Roadkill sort of right in your face. But there can be subtle things too. There's a famous haiku by the Buddhist poet Isa, which Jeff Wilson talks about. Isa writes, "Just existing, I exist, snow drifting down." And Dr. Wilson talks about this haiku as reminding us of a time after a heavy snowfall, when the world is transformed into a new landscape of soft round edges and the muffling pure white snow. A few tawny flakes are still falling haphazardly from the sky, and the air is fresh and clean. Isa awakens to and points to the simple miracle of his existence. Just bare existence itself, a wonder greater than any act of nature. Snow is drifting down, just as it is. And he is just walking alone in appreciation, just as he is. Nothing is needed for joy except a few snowflakes and gratitude for his life and the chance to experience its beauty. But for us to realize the same experience requires us to live in the present and be open to receiving this kind of message. When Nori and I were first married, we drove several trips back and forth between Ann Arbor and Michigan and our parents' homes in South Jersey. We would drive along Interstate 80, which sort of runs along the top of Pennsylvania. We were making the trip back to Ann Arbor in January, and Nori was driving, and I was resting, quietly looking out the car window at the sunny, glistening snow-covered farmhouses and the fields in the valley far below. The quiet beauty of what I was looking at suddenly and unexpectedly drew a quiet wow from me. A literature professor that I had used to use the term the wellness of life. And you suddenly, without planning or consciousness, become aware of life. It seems that it happens so rarely that I still remember the ride. I still remember the scene that I was looking at, even after these many decades. Deep hearing of Amita's voice is very hard indeed. I think music is another way Amita's calling voice can touch us if we are open and receptive to the call. Music can touch us in so many ways. It can be inspiring, like the Hallelujah chorus from Handel's Messiah, or the impossible dream from the Man of La Mancha. Music can also be reaffirming, like the song "A Thousand Winds," which Ann Stegner sang for us at one of our music services. If you don't remember, it's a song based on the poem, "Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep." Songs and music can be romantic and loving, and reminding us of our feelings for others. And songs can also be inspirational and comforting. Before my mother died, and she knew she was dying, we planned out her funeral so that we wouldn't have to go through that trauma after she passed. She said that she would like a longtime family friend, Kazi Keta, to do the eulogy, if you would. And one of the gathas she would like to have sung was one of her favorites, Saya. I contacted Kaz, and he said he would be honored to do the eulogy. And when he learned that we were going to be singing Saya, he told me about how that song helped him in a time of great need himself. He was a World War II veteran with the famous Japanese-American 442nd Regimental Combat Team. He had been wounded really badly, and the hospital staff weren't sure he was going to make it. And he said that while he was lying in the hospital, the song Saya would keep going through his mind, and it gave him peace and comfort. The lyrics go, "How beautiful the starry sky. Who could know the mystery of the heavens? When these countless eyes shine brilliantly, my heart is filled with joy. More numerous than the sands of the Ganges are the Buddhas. When I hear that they watch over us night and day, my heart is filled with peace." I think music touches the humanness in each of us. And Amita's calling voice reminds us to look at ourselves and realize this humanness. It is said that hearing Amita's voice is like looking into a mirror. We don't know if we have a smudge on our face unless we look into the mirror of the Dharma. You know, there was a time before I retired that I would faithfully read the front section of a couple of newspapers and the editorials and the columnists. Today in my retirement, I start with the style section, and then I go to Metro, and if there's time, maybe a little bit of the front section. I don't know where you are in each of your lives, and so I'm not sure you can identify with faithfully reading the comics. The comics would seem like an odd place to find the Dharma, but even from there, I think Amita's voice calls to us. Now, Nori and I often laugh at some of the gag lines in cartoons like Pickles about this elderly couple who were grandparents and certainly getting on in years. Or the cartoon Zips about this family with a teenage son. We laugh because some of the situations depicted hit close to home, and we're laughing at ourselves. There's also a comic strip, Sally Forth, about the strum and drum of this family living their daily normal lives. Over the years, I've watched their daughter and friends growing up. They're 13 now. But several months ago, or maybe even a year, there was a story about her breaking up with her boyfriend. She was 12 at the time. And they broke up because he moved away. And though he would visit, it wasn't the same. And things had changed, as they do in real life. And I followed the parents, Ted and Sally, go through a strain in their marriage because they too were changing, and they didn't talk about what was going on with them. And now Ted's father is dying, and for the past couple of weeks the strip is about how the family members are dealing with this fact. You know, it's sad, though with humor, and much of it hits a familiar place in our being. Maybe Amita's voice again. And also as we listen to our family and our friends in joking patter or in deep conversation, there is much to learn about ourselves and our lives, for they are sharing Amita's voice with us. A friend who recently lost his wife after many, many years of marriage was talking about the loneliness that accompanies such a loss. He said that he didn't realize how much he depended on her for his daily life. These conversations got me thinking about my own life. I recently commented to Nori that if she were not here, I could probably go for days without talking to anyone, without saying anything. And I realized that I don't know how to pay the bills because she does it online. And I don't even know how to make coffee because I don't know the ratio between coffee and water. It struck me how dependent I am and how much I take it all for granted. Once, when we were having dinner in a restaurant with a couple who were friends of Nori's from Hawaii, they bowed their heads and silently said grace. We, at that time, often on said Namo Amida Butsu Itadakimasu. And it often depended upon where we were. But this time, we did say it. As you can imagine, Namo Amida Butsu Itadakimasu doesn't take a whole heck of a lot of time. And so, Phil said that we didn't have to rush because of that. And I explained that the words just summarized a deeper thought of gratitude and interdependence behind the words. After all, our food would have gotten cold if I sat there and tried to explain the whole reason for the gratitude. But it also occurred to me to wonder why we shouldn't express our gratitude all the time, no matter where we were. And so now we, and hopefully our children and our grandchildren, are used to doing gasho and saying itadakimasu in gratitude, regardless of where we are. So, in this sense of interdependence, why don't we now turn to our partner and our children and our friends sitting next to us and just say thank you. And I'll give you a few seconds to do that. If we are open and receptive, we can perhaps begin to hear Amita's calling voice reveal to us the truth about ourselves and about the Dharma. That can be through nature, as I said, in which we live to experience the many truths open to us. Though we may not be like the haiku poet Isa, able to find joy and peace in the miracle of existing as he experiences a snowfall, we can try to live our lives each day and appreciate and realize the truths of the Dharma, even in the roadkill that we see. And then we express our gratitude. Namami Dabusu. Or the truths can be open to us in the music that touches our hearts, and we can learn about ourselves from that which moves us. Even in the comics of all places, Amita's voice calls to us to hear the truths about ourselves and what we find funny and what we can identify with, even when it's not so funny. And Amita's voice comes in the words and the actions of our friends and family as we share life together. Now, what is Amita's calling voice sharing with us? I think Amita's voice reminds us of the impermanence of all things. And because of that, the importance of living and being aware of every day and every moment of our lives. I think Amita's voice reminds us of the interdependence of all things. We should not let our ego run away thinking we did it, that I did it my way. I did it on my own and I did it my way. But rather, we should live our life in gratitude. I think Amita's voice reminds us of our humanness, that is ego-driven and the cause of our world of samsara, our world of suffering. But in knowing of the suffering, our suffering, that this humanness can cause, I wonder what kind of people we would be if we didn't love others. We didn't want things for ourselves and our family. We didn't have ambitions and desires. We have to weigh these things and know that they can be the source of our suffering. But I think at that same time, Reverend Hayashi would remind us that as we weigh these things, there is a middle way for us to consider. And I think the real important lesson from all this is that Amita's calling voice tells us that even as we are ego-driven and unenlightened, we are one with Amita through the infinite wisdom and compassion of the Dharma, as expressed through Amita's 18th vow. We are the unenlightened waves skimming on top of the ocean. We are the wave crashing into the shore, and we are the water that recedes back into the non-judging, non-rejecting ocean of the Dharma. Now, I have read this poem to you before, but I think it bears repeating. It is from Urban Sushi's book, The Heart of the Dharma. It is a poem entitled, Listen. It goes, listen. Listen to the voice of the Dharma. Listen to the birds singing in the morning, the wind sighing in the boughs overhead, the roar of the waves on the beach. Listen to the rain on the roof and the snow falling in the fields. The Dharma speaks to us through the sounds of the world, forcefully and eloquently and beautifully. It speaks of the unending change around us, the immutable truth of interdependence, and the peace in nature. Do we have the ears to hear and listen? Listen to the Nembutsu and the Hondo. Listen to the noble silence of the Buddha. No mind doubts.